From the first moment, the world saw Michael Jackson step onto a stage as a small, bright-eyed boy. No one imagined the weight he was already carrying on his tiny shoulders. He smiled, he danced, he electrified audiences with his voice, but behind those shining eyes lived a child who had already made a promise, a private vow to himself, carved from pain, loneliness, and longing. A promise so heartfelt and powerful that it shaped every song he wrote, every stage he stepped on, every child he embraced, and every dream he tried to bring to life. It was a promise born from the one thing he never truly had, a normal childhood. And it was a promise he kept until the end of his life, no matter how much the world misunderstood him, judged him, or tried to break him. This is the story of that heartbreaking promise, why he made it, how it defined his mission, and how keeping it changed millions of lives forever. Michael Jackson's rise to fame began faster than any child should ever experience. While most children were playing outside, learning to ride bicycles, or laughing with school friends, Michael was rehearsing for hours under the stern watch of his father. The Jackson Five were becoming stars, and Michael was the center. The voice, the energy, the spark that turned the group into a phenomenon. But what the world loved most about him was exactly what was being taken away from him, his innocence. He was just 8 years old when the spotlight swallowed him whole. Nights on stage replaced nights with bedtime stories, studio walls replaced playgrounds, rehearsals replaced recess. He would often look out from behind the stage curtains at other children in the audience and wonder how it felt to be free, to run in the sun, to not worry about hitting the right notes or remembering choreography. Fame was a gift to the world, but it was a theft from him. And in the quiet moments, during long car rides to shows, lonely hotel rooms, or exhausted nights after rehearsals, Michael made a silent promise to his younger self. If I ever grow up and find success, I will give children the childhood I never had. I will protect them, care for them, and make sure they feel the joy I missed. As Michael grew older, the world saw the results of that promise, though most never understood where it came from. They saw him spend time with children, invite sick or disadvantaged kids to his concerts, and create playgrounds and safe spaces wherever he went. To many, it looked unusual. To him, it was healing. When he became a solo superstar, breaking every record imaginable, he finally had the power and resources to fulfill the vow he had whispered as a child. Neverland was not just a home, it was the physical creation of his promise. It was the world he wished he had grown up in, a place where the wounded could feel whole, where laughter echoed louder than pain, where childhood wasn't measured by age but by joy. Neverland had theme, park rides, exotic animals, lakes, movie theaters, secret gardens, everything designed to awaken the forgotten child in anyone who visited. And for the sick children who arrived in wheelchairs or with their faces pale from chemotherapy, Neverland became a miracle hidden behind gates. But Michael's promise did not end with building a magical place. His heart was always tuned to the needs of those who suffered. Whenever he heard of a child who needed medical help, he quietly stepped in paying hospital bills, arranging surgeries, visiting them unannounced, sometimes even holding their hands in their final moments. To protect children from illness, poverty, and desperation became his lifelong mission. He did this when the cameras were on, but more importantly, he did it when no one was watching. There are thousands of stories told by families decades later of how Michael changed their children's lives. And he never asked for credit because he wasn't doing it for the world. He was doing it for the little Michael who once cried alone backstage, wishing someone would rescue him from a life too heavy for a child. However, a promise born from purity was met with a world not ready to understand it. The more he gave, the more people questioned him. As his fame reached levels no human had ever experienced, so did the scrutiny. Rumors spread, doubts were manufactured, Every gesture of kindness became twisted into suspicion. But through it all, Michael stayed focused on the vow that guided his life. When pressured to protect his image, he answered simply, "I will never stop helping children. If I do that, then I have failed my heart." Those words were not for the cameras. They were echoes of the promise he had bound himself to long before he became the king of pop. The world saw Michael's talent, but it rarely stopped to see the emotional burden he carried. Fame isolated him. Success magnified his loneliness. Every accusation, every misunderstanding, every betrayal by people he trusted cut deeper because his intentions were rooted in love, not self-gain. Yet, no matter how many times he was attacked, he never grew bitter toward the children he defended. He once said in an interview, "I will never turn my back on kids. Never. I owe them more than anyone could understand." Behind that simple sentence was an entire lifetime of pain, healing, and commitment. Even his music reflected the promise. Songs like "Heal the World," "Childhood," "Earth Song," "Will You Be There," and "Gone Too Soon" were not just songs. They were emotional messages, pleas, and confessions. In Childhood, he revealed his heart completely, asking the world to stop judging him and try to understand the quiet sorrow he had carried since childhood. When he sang the line, "Have you seen my childhood?" it wasn't metaphorical. It was a cry carved from the deepest corners of his memories. He was telling the world what he had lost, and why he spent his life trying to protect that same innocence in others. The promise he made to protect, uplift, and bring joy to children was evident even in the way he interacted with his own kids. Paris, Prince, and Blanket were surrounded by love, gentleness, and the childhood he never had. He shielded them from fame, gave them privacy, and encouraged their creativity. He wanted them to grow safely, freely, and unburdened by the weight that had crushed him so early in life. Michael had once said that the greatest achievement of his life was not Thriller, not record-breaking world tours. It was being a father, because in fatherhood he could finally give what he had longed for since he was 8 years old. But keeping this promise came at a cost. The more he gave to others, the more the world tried to take from him. His generosity was targeted, his love was mocked, and his intentions were questioned in the harshest ways. Each scandal, each lawsuit, each headline chipped away at his spirit. Those who knew him saw how deeply the constant attacks pained him. They saw the sleepless nights, the trembling hands, the silent tears. Behind the masks and sunglasses was a man who had spent his entire life trying to fix a wound the world kept reopening. But even during his darkest days, he never broke the vow he made as a little boy. He continued donating, visiting hospitals, inviting children to Neverland, and supporting charities. He once whispered to a close friend, "If I stop helping kids, then all of this everything I've done means nothing." That sentence captures the entire essence of Michael Jackson's heart. In his final years, the promise became even more powerful. As he prepared for the This Is It concerts, he told his team he wanted to use the platform to spread messages of healing and unity. His rehearsals were filled with passion, not because he wanted to reclaim fame, but because he wanted to use the world's biggest stage to remind people of love, kindness, and the magic of childhood. His dream was not just to entertain, it was to inspire. Even though his own body was exhausted, his voice weakened, and his heart burdened, his commitment remained unshaken. On June 25, 2009, when the world received the news of Michael Jackson's passing, millions cried for the entertainer they love. But for countless parents, children, and families around the world, the pain went deeper. They knew they had lost someone who had not just performed for them, but someone who had healed them, supported them, or brought rare happiness into their lives. In the days that followed, stories poured out, stories the world had never heard. Stories of Michael paying for funerals of children he'd never met, calling hospitals late at night to check on young cancer patients, sending toys, letters, and financial help secretly, and comforting parents who were losing their children. These stories weren't gossip, they were testimonies to the promise he had kept quietly, without applause. Michael Jackson left behind music that will echo for centuries, but he also left behind something far more powerful, a legacy of compassion. He built a bridge between his childhood pain and the healing of millions of others. His life became proof that even the deepest wounds can be transformed into blessings for others. He could have chosen bitterness, resentment, or distance. Instead, he chose love, he chose children, he chose kindness even when it wasn't returned. That is the true mark of greatness, not a moonwalk, not album sales, not awards, but a heart that chooses love despite the world's cruelty. Today, when people look back at Michael Jackson, they see a global icon, a cultural phenomenon, a superstar unlike any other. But behind all the glitter stood a promise, a fragile, tender, heartbreaking vow that shaped his every breath. Few understood it while he lived, but many are beginning to understand it now. The world is finally seeing the little boy who grew up too fast, the man who spent his life trying to heal his own broken childhood by protecting the innocence of others, and the human being whose heart was far bigger than his fame. Michael Jackson once said, "To give someone a piece of your heart is worth more than all the wealth in the world." And that is exactly what he did. His heart, though bruised by life, remained open until the end. Through every child he saved, every family he comforted, every charity he supported, and every song he poured his soul into, he fulfilled the silent promise he made as a lonely child behind a stage curtain. A promise to protect the magic of childhood, a promise to bring joy where there was sorrow, a promise to be the guardian he never had, a promise to love unconditionally without expecting anything in return. And that is the heartbreaking promise Michael Jackson made and kept